Come a little later on, as I say, 5:05, but right now we go back to those beautiful, lovely, shiny new commentary boxes. We have Harry Benjamin and the team there. It's practice 2 at the Hungary Grand Prix. Good afternoon again to you.
Good afternoon again, Kevin. Thank you very much. You'll be pleased to hear we have kept the air conditioning on in our commentary box, so very pleased about that, although the man alongside me is shaking his head furiously. Welcome back to the Hungaroring. It's the 14th round of the Formula One season and the final race before the summer break. We're about 20 kilometres northeast of Budapest, situated in a natural valley, which is where this Hungaroring track lies. 4.3 kilometres, just over that. 14 turns, 8 that go to the right and 6 that go to the left. The man alongside me is racing driver Sam Bird. We've also got the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson with us. Sam, what are the challenges of this track for a driver?
What are the challenges? It is extremely challenging, this circuit. To get it right in qualifying, you've got to put everything right. You've got to get the surface temperature of the tyre absolutely perfect. You've got to execute a brilliant sector 2, which is actually where McLaren seem to be extremely strong. Other cars are good in sector 1, but they are sensational from turn 4 all the way to the exit of turn 11. And then the final sector as well, turn 14, absolutely critical to still have tyre life by the time you get there. If not, your last sector is going to suffer.
Yeah, it really is a challenging track, and qualifying tomorrow will certainly be one to watch out for. Let's just give you an update on how the standings look coming into this weekend. In the Drivers' Championship, Oscar Piastri for McLaren leads by 16 points over his teammate Lando Norris in second. Then a little further adrift comes Max Verstappen, 81 points back. Then over in the Constructors' Championship, it is a rather healthy lead for McLaren, who are sitting pretty at the top. 516 points to their name. They have more than double the amount Ferrari do in second place. Then it's Mercedes, Red Bull, the top four, with Williams in the midfield, heading that in fifth. Sauber, Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, Haas, all separated by just a handful of points, with Alpine down in last with 20 points to their name. So still plenty to fight for ahead of this final race before we shut down for the summer, but there's still a lot to look out for. And looking up and down the pit lane for us across the weekend is Jenny Gow. Afternoon, Jenny.
Good afternoon everyone at home. I am an eager beaver. That's what I'm going to say today. I'm looking out for all things in the pit lane, and the first thing I've spotted is Fernando Alonso, which is good news. He sat out FP1, but he's back in the car for FP2. He had some sort of muscle strain after Spa, and they've just given him the morning off to just recover, have a bit more physio, work those bones and muscles, and he'll see how he goes for FP2, but hopefully he'll be absolutely fine, and Aston Martin will be back up to a full complement of racing drivers.
Yes, absolutely. We can see him now, just sat in the cockpit of his Aston Martin, getting ready to head out onto the circuit. FP2 will get underway in a couple of minutes' time. It was Felipe Drugovich who sat in for the Spaniard in FP1. Andrew, there was plenty of news actually coming into this weekend. Max Verstappen putting to bed rumours about his immediate future, at least, and it looks like the Ferrari team boss is sticking around a bit longer too.
Yeah, Fred Vasseur's got a new contract which they described as multi-year. It's really annoying the way Formula One teams do that. They don't give you the actual years, but Vasseur's first contract with Ferrari was 3 years because he was coming to the end of it at the end of the season, so I suspect it'll be the same thing again. As for Verstappen, Mercedes were courting him relatively openly through the first 6 months of this year. And he said yesterday it was time to end those rumours and confirm that he would stay at Red Bull next year. He's got a contract to the end of 2028, so of course it's interesting that he didn't just confirm that he was going to stay till the end of that, but what he's done basically is given himself a bit more time to see how Formula One settles down with the new regulations in 2026, with new cars and new engines coming in. And then he can make a much more informed choice, and also it becomes contractually a lot easier to leave at that point if Red Bull are uncompetitive during this next season.
You're going to want to see who gets the regulations right next year and who doesn't before you really put your bets on any particular team. But, I mean, Sam, for the likes of George Russell, for Kimi Antonelli, particularly George, because he is, well, they both had a contract this year, but George Russell's been performing so well at the start of this season. That must be so frustrating. I know it's Max Verstappen, but when you're George Russell, as the green light comes on at the end of the pit lane and we're underway for FP2, you must be thinking, come on, guys, what on earth are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, Carlos Sainz had the same thing at Ferrari when Lewis Hamilton all of a sudden said that he was going to leave and wanted to join Ferrari. Carlos Sainz had to make way. If Max Verstappen comes calling to Mercedes, somebody's going to be going. Doesn't matter how well you're performing. If Max Verstappen's available and he comes to your team and says, I want to drive for you, you've got to make room for him. So it's, for me, Max Verstappen, where could he go? I think there's two places, aren't there? If he weren't to be at Red Bull for the long-term future, he's going to be looking at Aston Martin, which for me makes sense on paper, given the Adrian Newey link and the Honda link, or it's Mercedes, because I think that they can spend an awful lot of money on him, and it's a huge brand. So
it certainly will be, as more cars feed out of the pit lane. For those who wish to do a sync up, it's 58 minutes and 53, 52, 51 seconds remain of free practice 2. On the George Russell side, and actually Andrew, you might know a bit more, what is it now just a formality then about when he will get a contract renewal at Mercedes? And equally, how long does George Russell want that contract for? Because he will surely, while Mercedes are very, the paddock gossip, right, is that they're quite well advanced in their engine for 2026 and beyond, but he'll also want to see how Mercedes land next year too.
Well, Russell was kind of making the point yesterday that it's a slightly unique was the word he used. I would say awkward or unusual would be another way of describing it, in that he is not only employed by Mercedes, he's also managed by Mercedes. So as he put it yesterday, I don't have huge power in this agreement, and maybe interests were not aligned for the last 6 months. So he's looking at that as a racing driver and thinking, hang on a minute, my managers are actively potentially looking at employing somebody else to replace me with. How does that work?
It's a massive conflict of interest,
yeah,
surely.
Exactly. So he's just got a few questions in his head about that. Yes, Harry, of course he's going to stay at Mercedes next year now, and so is Kimi Antonelli. Now, how long is that contract? We don't know.
Multi-year.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, Antonelli will probably be on a year-by-year contract for now. Russell's in a slightly different position, but he might want to have the flexibility of a one-year deal, because I think the chances are if Verstappen's available next year, Mercedes are still going to want him, and there's also the option of Aston Martin, as Sam says. Fernando Alonso's contract runs out at the end of next year. Also, he'll be 45 and a half by the end of next year. Now, he is a phenomenal character in many ways, Fernando Alonso, but he can't go on forever. You wouldn't have thought. So there's going to be questions about that too. It's just you can see why Russell's been finding it a slightly awkward situation for himself, and I think he wants to spend a bit of time just thinking about that over the summer break, he was saying yesterday, just to get his head into a place where he feels that he's in a more comfortable place in understanding where things are with Mercedes.
It was similar, right, or the same with Valtteri Bottas, wasn't it? And I believe he is still part of Total's management company.
It was, but I think there's a different, there should be a slightly different power dynamic with Russell than there was with Bottas. Russell is unquestionably one of the very top drivers in Formula One. Valtteri Bottas wasn't, ever. So I think Russell, it's understandable why he might think that he should have a bit more power in that situation. On the other hand, he was saying, I still trust Toto, that's Wolff, the team principal, obviously, and Mercedes to have my best interests at heart. But obviously, there is a question about that. If he wants to be in Mercedes and they don't want him to be in Mercedes, it's tricky.
Oh, the inner turmoil and politics of a Formula One team in the future.
Now, you might ask, why? Here's some radio from Ocon.
There was quite a lot of gravel on 12, so have a look at damage.
They still got some gravel being left by one of the support races, presumably, that have happened between P1 and P2. Why would Russell be the one who's under threat in the situation that Verstappen goes to Mercedes when he's been outperforming Antonelli? Well, partly because Russell and Verstappen's relationship is not the best, as we know, and I understand Verstappen was not that keen on driving with Russell as his teammate, so that will be the answer to that.
Just seeing a lot of gravel that Esteban Ocon just referred to being kicked up onto the track at the right-hander, 90-degree right-hander of turn 12, which was kicked up, not by the support categories, by Nico Hülkenberg Sauber.
So I incorrectly and unfairly blamed the Porsche Supercup drivers there, didn't I? How silly of me.
It's always the pesky Supercup drivers, isn't it?
Andrew, you looking back at Valtteri's time in Formula One so far, obviously right now he's having a bit of a coffee break at Mercedes.
I like what you did there.
Yeah. So you don't feel like he was a top driver?
Do you?
Yeah, I think not. Look, he wasn't in the same class as Lewis and never really threatened Lewis for the title. But I think he was extremely quick. I think to say that he wasn't, define top.
Well,
what do you mean by top?
Is Bottas? So what I mean by that is he? So at the moment, I would say there's Verstappen, but there's sort of an elite class of drivers in Formula One, right?
So that would be like Lando,
Verstappen,
Oscar,
Leclerc, Norris, Piastri, Russell, Hamilton, and Alonso.
Yeah.
Is Bottas in that category? No.
But at that time,
no, I don't think he was.
At that time, I would have put him in that bracket.
Well, I've got the stats to demur from that point.
Fine.
He was Hamilton's second slowest teammate on average in qualifying over his career.
Who was the slowest?
Kovalainen.
Heikki, yeah. Who actually got his maiden and only win here in 2008.
It's really difficult, isn't it? Because you're not saying Valtteri Bottas is a terrible driver.
No, he's like top of Division 2.
Yeah, exactly. He's a good driver, a great number 2 driver. Great number 2 driver.
Plays
wasn't
for
he?
Forest
He played perfectly for Lewis.
Rovers.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, you look at...
And it's a brutal assessment, Sam, but it's reality.
Fair enough.
Where would you have put Mark Webber?
Same.
As the number 2.
Well, I think one of the really interesting things about Mark Webber is he was really close to Sebastian Vettel. And at the time, Sebastian Vettel was romping away with 4 consecutive world titles, and certain people thought that he was like one of the greatest drivers in the history of the world. I actually never thought he was quite at that level. It's all subjective, of course. Please don't pile on me.
I thought you had the stats.
Sebastian Vettel fans. Well, the stats are quite simple, right? So I'll give you them as a comparison. So Vettel, when he was teammates with Kimi Raikkonen, was about a couple of tenths quicker than him on average in qualifying. When Fernando Alonso was teammates with Kimi Raikkonen, he was half a second quicker than him in qualifying.
Right.
Do you know what? I think it depends on how quickly and how well you get on with a certain era and certain regulation change. Like we were speaking about this off air just before. Lewis was brilliant at the previous era, and so were Mercedes, but he was brilliant at extracting the maximum from that era. Right now, it's as if Verstappen is the best in this era, and probably there's some other drivers that are very, very good in this era as well. But then Lewis has not really got on top of the ground effect cars as much. You look at the Schumacher days, it was basically him out on his own. Vettel with the Coanda exhausts and the late downshifts from 2012, 11, 12, 13 era. It kind of goes in little periods with a driver kind of dominating and getting on top of that phase. Not too many drivers seem to have been able to go from one regulation to another and be dominant. I'd say Verstappen's made the best fist of it with the previous reg and the ground effect cars. What do you feel like, Benny? Is that a fair assessment?
I would have said
in recent history.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's complicated because certain drivers have ended up not in good cars. So, for example, if you can only talk about the modern era first of all because the old eras didn't last that long. So Jackie Stewart, for example, won 3 championships over the course of 9 years or something. He only did 99 races.
Yeah.
or in the 60s, people like Jim Clark got killed. In the 70s, again, you wouldn't get a career much longer than 10 years, whereas now careers are much longer. But, so here's Russell's radio.
What's Beeman doing? He was on the left-hand side. I was letting him by.
It's George Russell and Ollie Bearman coming through that twisty middle sector, and that's a tricky place to try and get by a slow car there.
And then we're also only talking about a very few drivers anyway who you could consider to be in this bracket. So you're talking about Verstappen, Hamilton, Vettel, Alonso. That's basically it. Okay, and
Schumacher
and Michael. Yeah. So and Alonso didn't get a good car after about 2012. So, how has he adapted between the previous era and this era? We can't answer it because his cars aren't competitive. I mean, he's pasted all his teammates, but what does that mean? We don't know. Because are they top-level teammates? So it's a tricky one to answer. But I do know people in the paddock who would say that it's about adaptability. They're surprised that Hamilton's not been able to adapt to the ground effect cars, and that they think, at least on the evidence, that Alonso probably has been able to. With the caveat that his Lance Stroll is his teammate, and how good is he?
Well, that could be debated on hashtag BBC F1 across the eras and across the drivers who's adapted well, and we've got a one on the horizon.
Just to make one final point about that,
Go on, Benny.
is a really good example as well. But again, it's an imponderable example because he was brilliant through his era. His only real rival was Mika Hakkinen, who was probably as good as him, but he didn't last as long at the top, and he quit because he lost the desire quite quickly. But then when Schumacher retired for the first time, he had a motorcycle accident in which he broke his neck, and when he came back in 2010, he didn't perform at it didn't look like he was performing anymore at the level that he was at 4 years before, because he was slower than Nico Rosberg, and basically he had to retire again, not least because Mercedes weren't going to continue with him, and they signed Hamilton to replace him. But then the question becomes, was Schumacher as good as he had been before? But Rosberg would have won all those titles if he'd been in a Ferrari at the same time as Schumacher. Or was Schumacher not what he was when he came back? I would tend towards the second argument.
I think there would be a lot of people that would go with that as well. But it is a really fascinating debate that we could do our own podcast on.
Yeah, we could do this for 47 minutes.
Yeah.
The public wanted.
I tell you what, though.
Interesting than I know we wouldn't get.
No, but Sam, I thought you wanted to focus on what's happening on the track.
Yeah, but this is my topic. We're not talking about is Hungary the Monaco with walls?
No, it's not. We can confirm that the Hungarian is Monaco without the houses. Anyway, it's 47 minutes and 5 seconds remaining of this FP2 session. Lando Norris is quickest, a 1:16.9 on the medium tyre. He's over 2.5 tenths clear of Charles Leclerc. Then it's Russell, Hadjar, Hamilton is in 5th, ahead of Piastri, Tsunoda, Stroll, Hülkenberg and Sainz the top 10. Antonelli and Albon are P11 and 12. Then it's Bearman, Lawson, Verstappen down in 15th. Then it's Alonso, Ocon, Colapinto, Bortoletto and Pierre Gasly. Everybody has been out, a few still in the pit lane, which is where we can find Jenny.
And that's the sound of one of the Mercedes just whizzing past me into the pit lane. They're just doing a practice pit stop, and they're pushing the car back into the garage. I think it's probably from the back, it's really hard to tell. George Russell, I'm going to bet George Russell, who knows? It's one of them. And I'm just alongside Red Bull, both cars now out. Looks like Tsunoda again is fighting that car. It seems like every week he comes to race Red Bull, and it's not working for him as he would like to, but he's back out there trying his hardest to bring this car to a decent place.
I mean, if you're Hadjar looking forward to next year, I mean, I'm pretty sure that Tsunoda is on thin ice, to put it bluntly. I think as good as he was with Racing Bulls or whatever the name of the car is now, I think Hadjar is.
But is the same thing not just going to happen to Hadjar?
Well, that's my worry.
Yeah,
and it's a real worry because actually he's been a revelation this year, and will that second seat at Red Bull swallow him up as well?
So this is the
It's a
problem.
worry.
This is why I wonder, for Red Bull, as Oscar Piastri now goes to the top of the times with a 1:16.697, 2/10 clear of Lando Norris. This is why I wonder, Red Bull I feel like they need a fresh start. Laurent Mekies coming in at the helm is a good place to be with that. Okay, Max Verstappen is going to be there next year, but I almost wonder actually if it might even be beneficial for both parties to split if Max left,
because it's so good for Red Bull to have him, but at the same time,
blessing and a curse.
Yeah, the second driver can't live. It seems like he's the only one that can drive that car. No one else can drive it the way that he can drive it, and it's set up the way that he needs in order to extract the performance. You look at Perez. Perez would start the season well, but it would be too understeery for Max Verstappen. They dial more and more and more front end into it, and no driver can live with that. I think Albon once described it as having all the force feedback on your PlayStation game turned up to 100%, and you move the steering wheel a millimetre, and all of a sudden it's turning into a hairpin. So
yeah, it's like the cursor on your computer, and as soon as the smallest of movement goes,
yeah, and
miles.
you're across the screen.
And Max Verstappen can live with that, but most other drivers can't. And whilst there's a lot of arguments to go, oh, the Red Bull are just developing a car for Max Verstappen, that's almost the byproduct.
Bottom is so messy.
As on cue, Yuki Tsunoda says this balance is so messy. But Red Bull, obviously, they're going to follow what Max Verstappen is suggesting, because he's able to get the most amount of lap time out of it.
You follow the lead driver.
Yeah.
You follow the guy that's quickest. The engineers will listen to him and go, right, we need to go in his direction because he's more likely to score us points. Then they'll take on Yuki's points, and they'll take on Sergio's points, and there'll come a point where they go, well, we've got to give him, from the components that we've got on the aero that we've made, in order to make Max better, we have to dial it down now for the other driver.
Well, they do have a new front wing, which they were testing in FP1, were Red Bull. And when it comes to Tsunoda, he was within 0.4 of Verstappen around Spa in qualifying, which was actually pretty good for Tsunoda, but there's still some big question marks over his race pace. He talks a lot about his tyres just melting over the course of a Grand Prix, and that will be tested to the maximum here. So this will be a crucial weekend for Tsunoda going into the summer break, but perhaps with Laurent Mekies a little bit more in his corner, that will help.
Main balance limitation, please. Yes, for the rear mate. I just like driving on ice. Copy that, thank you.
Well, at least they're both saying the same thing, aren't they? Because I mean, Yuki was saying in FP1 that it was just sliding front and rear, and that's exactly what Max has said just now. So not ideal for Red Bull currently.
So this is not uncommon with drivers who aren't as good as other drivers, so Tsunoda and Verstappen. You can sometimes get to within a reasonable margin of someone on one lap when you're using the peak of the tyre grip, but when you're running a race stint, your car is just that bit messier than the other guy's car, because he's got the skill and the ability to just hold it and stop the sliding, just balance it, just manipulate it in that way, which Tsunoda doesn't have. So it's not a surprise that over a race stint, he's a little bit of a slide here, a little bit of a slide there, just the tyres just go away that bit more, each one of those micro slides that happens, and over 15 laps, that's why he's nowhere over a race stint compared to Verstappen. Yeah,
exactly. So if you think of it like this, Harry, if Max Verstappen during a race run is pushing at 80% of what he could do on a maximum flat out, give it everything lap, Yuki Tsunoda will be pushing to do the same lap time. He'll be pushing 85% of what he could naturally do, and that extra little bit, there's that little bit of more sliding from the rear tyre, a little bit more slip, and then instead of the tyre lasting for 15 laps or 20 laps, it lasts for 13 or 18, depending on the compound. So yeah, the end of the stint you start to see a struggle. And then you get another example of why second-rate drivers or not as good drivers can't compete with drivers like Verstappen or Hamilton or Alonso or whatever. So say a car's got really snappy oversteer, a Verstappen or an Alonso, they'll get over that by
forcing but they call it over pushing the front. Sam will know what I'm talking about. You force the car to understeer, and then you balance it on the edge of where the car is just breaking away, but it's not quite, because you're able to control that. But the other driver who's not able to, he doesn't have the ability to over push the front. He just thinks the car's going to snap on him all the time, because it is, because he doesn't have the ability to balance the car on that edge on the way into the corner.
It's tough for Tsunoda at the moment, but let's see how he gets on this weekend. Tell you, a man who always seems to have the edge on a teammate is Fernando Alonso. Jenny, I believe you're outside Aston Martin.
I am. They're literally just firing the car up and sending him out on a set of used yellow-banded Pirelli tyres. It's going to get loud for a moment, so excuse me. It didn't really get that loud, did it? The number 14 whizzes out. They had the engine cover off for a short while. I think a lot of this circuit's track identity and the way it treats the cars, there's a lot of cooling needed. It's been very hot at the start of the day. The sun went in. It looked like it might rain after the session that happened earlier at FP1. Rain is predicted maybe for tomorrow, almost certainly for Sunday. It's just a question of when it hits. So there's a lot of cooling, a lot of louvres, they call them. They're like gills on a shark or a whale at the back of the car, just to open it up, make sure that the brakes are cooling down properly and that the engine doesn't overheat. So there's a lot going on to these cars this weekend, and Aston Martin certainly just tweaking all those levels.
Thanks, Jenny.
What's interesting as well is the cooling is just another example of where you can see the quality of McLaren's work with this year's car. Their car is much less open than some of the other cars, because I don't know how they've done it, but obviously they've got the cooling inside the car to work much more efficiently than some of the other teams. And what that means is they make it, because every hole that you open to cool the car more compromises aerodynamics. So you look at the Ferrari that we've got the rear view of Hamilton's car at the moment as he goes around. That's the engine you can hear. It's got some really big holes in the cooling louvers on the engine cover. And also at the back of the car, the vent above the diffuser is quite wide on most cars. The McLaren's vent at the back is much smaller, because they don't need, because I don't know, they've managed to get the cooling to work much more efficiently, and that enables them to run the car with more downforce more of the time, with not having to compromise it as much.
Yeah, it's a really strong package that McLaren have delivered. What was it Max Verstappen was saying? It's incredible, that car, some of the things he's been spotting on it. And of course it was for so long, there was a few things I think being churned up to the FIA about how they were keeping their rear tyres so cool across a race stint, but just highlights. Well, exactly. Injecting bits of water into the tyre, keeping it cool, but it just highlights what an incredible job McLaren have done. Not so incredible through the chicane a few moments ago for Lewis Hamilton.
No, and that's the third or fourth time that Lewis has done that over the course of 90 minutes worth of running so far. So he is definitely struggling with that end of braking phase in the Ferrari.
Just having a think about McLaren, you say the car, and it's been noted that it's outstanding. It's head and shoulders above everyone else at the moment. And I'm just thinking, next year, we're thinking that Mercedes might have the advantage when it comes to the engine. And we know how well McLaren have done with this year's car, and last year's car in fairness. So are we thinking that it could well be Mercedes versus McLaren again next year?
Well, the paddock rumour is, isn't it, Mercedes engine seems to be ahead of the rest. But then again, as Andrew's been saying, how can anyone really know that? But people talk. And if we cast our minds back to when we had our last big regulation change that involved the engines, it was Mercedes who came out miles ahead of everybody else. So they've got form.
Well, Harry, I was doing days on the Mercedes sim in 2011. It
was all down to
prepare.
you.
Well, of course, they owe me a lot. But 2011 we were on the sim. Nobody else was doing it until pretty much 16, 18 months later than us. Mercedes effectively wrote the regulations for that powertrain era. Yeah. So if they've got the same kind of head start again, we could be seeing Mercedes dominance for years to come. But let's see.
But this is where you can't rule out a Honda with Aston Martin either. So that's when the water starts to get a little bit murky, and you go, well, actually, we're not going to know until we've had pre-season testing, and even then, it's going to be at race 1 of the year that we're really going to see what everyone's got.
Yeah, we don't. The answer is we don't know. But I think the bigger question about Mercedes at the moment is not their engine capability; it's their chassis capability. We've had 4 years of these regulations; they're still not on top of them. That raises a question about where is their design department, and are they going to be able to nail the chassis regs next time as well? Even though they're not ground effect anymore, they're much more like the older style cars that we had before 2022. So there's just too many imponderables to answer questions like that at the moment.
Would you say that their issues have been, like as you've said, chassis, or is it more aero? So what I'd heard is that they made a conscious decision with this regulation change to change the flooring on their simulator to a much more durable and smoother material, and because of that it then gave out very, very different results, which is why then they went to the skinny side pod, and they were convinced that would work. And it basically was due to the fact that the air deflection off the floor of this new floor that they were using on the rolling road in their simulator, in their wind tunnel, was giving effectively poor results. Am I right in saying
I haven't heard that, but it makes a lot of sense, Sam, if that's true, and I wouldn't doubt your information, given that you've got quite good connections at Mercedes, obviously, having done all that simulator work there before. There's obviously, I think the point is there was something they clearly didn't understand at the start of these regulations, and not only that, but having had a year to see what Red Bull had done and other teams had done with their solution to these ground effect rules, they then committed to it again for a second year. I think that was the more confusing decision. It was almost like they were like, we can't be wrong, well, you are. But even when they've reverted to a more Red Bull style of car, they're still in this place where they're putting upgrades on it, and then it's making it worse.
And
meanwhile, Aston Martin, by the way, have also been struggling, haven't they, with these regs? Apart from that one stretch at the beginning of 23 when they basically copied the Red Bull, and they're using they have been using the Mercedes wind tunnel. I don't know whether that's a coincidence, but you could be forgiven for thinking that it wasn't, right?
It's not the first time we've heard teams having correlation issues between simulator and wind tunnel and on the track. So, I think in a long-winded way of answering your initial question, Jenny, is we're not ever going to know until we rock up in 2026 if it's going to be McLaren versus Mercedes.
I think I'm just making the point that Mercedes haven't nailed the aero and the package around it, but McLaren have. They both have the same engines. So going into next year, I'm excited to see what McLaren can do, because they've aced the last couple of years when it comes to a car concept and bringing on things that other people haven't been able to do. And just on that point, I am outside McLaren at the minute. They've just released both of the cars onto track with a nice shiny set of red tyres. That's the softest tyre.
Thank you very much, Jenny. They certainly have, and Stroll has also done that and put his Aston Martin to the top of the times, the 1:16.221 on that soft tyre, though it's 31 minutes and 57, 56, 55 seconds remain. It's Stroll, Norris and Piastri, the top three.
A load of cars now piling out on the soft tyre as Lando Norris starts his flying lap on them. Just a quick point about Aston Martin. You would expect them to have a better weekend here in Hungary this weekend than in Belgium last weekend, because it's a high downforce track. Their car has issues with high drag. They're not going to be penalised for that in Hungary, as Norris messes up his lap around turn 2, has had to abort it. So I'm expecting to see Fernando Alonso qualifying at the bottom end of the top 10 this weekend, as opposed to the very back like they both did last weekend.
Yeah, it was back row starts in Belgium, hoping for a little better. Now Norris has just bailed out of his first flying lap on the soft through turn 2. His teammate holds it through the left-hander to the quick right-hand kink of 3 that leads you uphill, almost over the blind crest of 4, slings it into the left-hander, gets so close to a car on the inside. It was Bortoletto Sauber. Before you know it, he's into the braking zone for the tight chicane. Technical precision at an absolute high, and now he's about to catch So much traffic in the middle sector through the sweepers of 8, 9 and 10. He tries to find his way through. It includes his teammate in there and does go fast, much faster than Lance Stroll's middle sector time. That would have cost him some time there, and that, Sam, is something we are absolutely going to see in Q1 tomorrow afternoon.
That's why this track can be so tricky in qualifying, especially Q1, finding clean air and executing a good lap. The cars like the McLarens, they should be fine. They'll still get through, but it's cars that need every single point of downforce available just to try and scrape through. Those are the cars that are going to suffer in Q1 if there is any traffic. I was watching the F3 qualifying that happened about an hour or an hour and a half ago. There are 30 cars out there.
That's mayhem on the best of races.
30 cars, nobody gets a clean lap, especially around this track. For this track, it's almost like they should really have two groups, because there's not a car on track that has 2 seconds to itself.
Well, they do that in F2 in Monaco, don't they?
They do.
They group them up because it's just going to lead to absolute carnage otherwise. But I suppose it's another factor that for us is quite good, and it's another challenge for the drivers to have to manage with their engineers.
Well, we normally see here in Sector 3 cars backing up with 2 corners to go, and it's painful. It's painful to watch. We see the same thing in a couple of places actually, but here is particularly bad.
Lando Norris is having another crack at his lap on the soft tyre, fastest of anybody through the first sector, makes his way through the sweepers in the middle sector, out through the right-hander of turn 11, into the braking zone of the 90-degree right-hander of turn 12. There's a small strip of gravel on the exit there, navigates it nicely, has to have a couple of turn-ins to the penultimate corner, turn 13, then it's a long arcing right-hander of turn 14. The rear end steps out on him. Small correction from Norris, would have cost him a bit of time, but he still goes fastest of anybody, almost 3/10 clear of his teammate Piastri, to the top for Norris.
It's a bit of a shame, actually. We're not going to get a like-for-like comparison with the McLarens, because Norris aborted his first lap after 2 corners, so the edge will have been taken off those tyres, and then Piastri's lap was undoubtedly compromised by, what was it, Sam, 7 or 8 cars he had to pass in that middle sector?
4 or 5, is definitely going through turns 8 to 11. Was high traffic.
Yeah, so there's no way that didn't impinge him to some degree or another. So and that's it now, because the tyres, their soft tyres are not in the same state anymore. So even if they both go again, it still won't be a like-for-like comparison as Verstappen comes across the line and, oh gosh, look at that, 1.1 seconds off the pace. God,
only 8th, and that was his flying lap. So for Max Verstappen, that was not a fun lap for him to endure.
No.
It's Norris, Piastri, then Stroll still holding third. Hadjar was up inside the top 4 at the end of FP1. He's there again already in FP2. Hamilton's 5th, make that 6th as Russell pops his Mercedes up into 4th. Antonelli in the other Mercedes is 7th. Then it's Ocon in the Haas. Verstappen now 9th. Lawson is 10th ahead of Hulkenberg, who's on an outlap at the moment. Sainz is 12th on the soft tyre. Charles Leclerc is now back out there. He swapped his mediums for the soft. He's down in 13th, but we ride on board with Charles Leclerc now. That's the sound you can hear of the Ferrari through the right-hander of 11 as he heads now slightly pitched downhill towards turn 12. The Sauber of Gabriel Bortoleto gets nicely out of the way, as does Lando Norris's McLaren through the left-hander of 13. Moves the car over to the left-hand side of the track, opens up the final right-hander for Charles Leclerc. The DRS opens, and he puts that Ferrari half a second behind the McLarens in 3rd.
Yeah, surprised that he's not a little bit closer. I think he looked a little bit more competitive in FP1. Lance Stroll's done a really good job to get up to P4. It's just come up on our screens, Harry, that an incident at turn 3 is noted with Max Verstappen. Now, we haven't seen what happened at turn 3 with Max Verstappen, but something has happened that has been noted and will be looked at by the stewards.
Yeah, turn 3, that's the quick right-hand kink that then leads you onto the short straight up towards turn 4. So we'll see. Hopefully the TV pictures might give us a replay and we can see what that is all about. But with 26 minutes remaining, Stroll's just come across the line once more and puts himself up into 3rd. So the Canadian flying on these soft tyres.
Well, the tyres look like they're lasting for 2 laps, and you can actually squeeze a time out of it on the second lap. The problem for Lando Norris is he did push a little bit and then have to back off already, so whether that second lap will be any good for him. We're now riding on board with Fernando Alonso, who after 2 sectors is 4.5 tenths down. He's going to be punching to try and beat Lance Stroll at this rate, but if he has a good last sector, should be comfortably in the top 6. What's he got across the line?
To the line.
And goes 5th.
Indeed, you were just about right. Up into 5th, puts Russell down to 6th. Piastri's having another go out there, although the middle sector has not been particularly good for the Australian. Gets so close to the inside barrier as he turns in for the final corner. He comes across the line next. Doesn't improve, does Oscar Piastri.
I mean, it was 0.003 of a second slower than his previous best, and it was effectively mostly lost in that middle sector, wasn't it?
And I think we're about to see why. He made a mistake bouncing through the chicane, and that sent him in to a little bit of the grass and the dust that lies in wait for you off the track, and certainly would have slowed him down quite a bit.
Well, that's not an ideal exit, plus then you've got dirt on your loaded tyres for the next section. This is with Max Verstappen. This is what happened at turn 3.
So he's coming through rather slowly. He's making lots of changes on his steering wheel. Then actually looks like a white plastic bag. I don't know if that blew into the cockpit of the car, but we certainly see him picking it up from below inside the Red Bull cockpit and then chucking it out. So that was a rather curious incident. He was very much preoccupied with some of the buttons on his steering wheel. I think, Jenny, have you got some Max Verstappen news?
Yeah, I'm just down here now, actually. They've just pushed the car back into the garage, and GP, his race engineer, is just looking very confused at what he's just seen. But they've taken the front wing off. They're just looking at what's gone on inside the car, if it's pulled anything into the car, any debris. They've also changed the weighting at the front of the front wing. They have ballast there and a little block that they can undo and change over the ballast just to make the driver happier. He's obviously not happy in that car. That's one thing we do know.
Yeah, for Verstappen then down in 13th at the moment. Work going on in the pit lane. Teammate Tsunoda is out there, and this is the sound of Hamilton on a quick lap on the soft tyre.
On a quick lap, he's done purple sector 1, Lewis Hamilton. So when he does get the braking right, he is still mighty quick, but he's lost 3.5 tenths in the middle sector. Clearly not comfortable still with that turn 6-7 chicane. And extremely clunky, probably B-grade downshifts going into turn 12. That 4th to 3rd, 3rd to 2nd sounded awful going through turn 12. He now comes round turn 14 and goes 6th fastest, 7 tenths down after a purple sector 1. But going back to Max Verstappen, what that looked like, Harry, so a lot of these teams use like rag, which is effectively like old t-shirts and stuff that have been washed and then recycled as rag and cleaning cloth on the cars. That to me, that wasn't a plastic bag, it looked too heavy. That to me looked like a white rag that had been left inside the cockpit.
That's a very good shout, actually, and that is going to be investigated after the session. So a very bizarre incident then for Max Verstappen and Red Bull to have to deal with the stewards after this.
We could do another guess, a bit like our rice versus ice. So I've said white rag.
Well, no, now
and you've said bag.
Well,
so let's rice and ice, bag and rag
response. I need another replay to get. But you're right. He threw it out, and it didn't sort of just float away. It had a bit of weight to it. So I'll give you the rag. Not seen any ice out yet in the garages that the drivers would eat ahead of the session to try and cool their internal body temperature down. This is the sound of Oliver Behrman, currently on the soft tyre, just coming through turn 5, now right on the limit in that Haas, desperate to try and get back into the points come Sunday afternoon. He's had 4 consecutive 11th place finishes for the British rookie. One more and that will become a record for the amount of 11th place consecutive finishes a driver has achieved in Formula 1, which is certainly not really one you want to have on your CV.
Who holds that record?
I actually don't know. I need to figure it out.
Surely it's Nico Hülkenberg. He seems to finish 11th quite a lot.
I actually have a suspicion it could be Zhou Guanyu because he had an awful lot of 11th place finishes, but I will actually try and find that out. But for Behrman, he got points in the sprint.
Oh, look, he's 11th.
And he's just got 11th now. Perfect. Thank you very much, Ollie Behrman. He actually shakes his helmet as he comes across the line.
Brilliant.
In that Haas. He's ahead of his teammate, though, who's down in 13th at the moment. So certainly seeing some quick runs being trialled out there. I have to say, both Aston Martins looking good on the one-lap pace for certain. Up in 4th for Stroll and Alonso just behind him. As we're just getting a look at what happened to Lando Norris a few moments ago. Coming round the final corner and almost finds the barrier. He dipped his front left tyre onto the grass as he was going to turn the car in for the final corner, and that could have been a big one, but he caught it, Sam.
Well, he's actually done Russell.
Oh, Norris.
He said, oh, Norris. Indeed, he's actually brought up puffs of dust there on numerous push laps over this session. That lap, obviously, he's just gone over the limit. Who else can we talk about, Harry? I mean, Yuki Tsunoda actually is up in P9 compared to Max Verstappen, who's not very happy, down in 14th. Red Bull Racing looking quite out of shape. Nico Hülkenberg up in 12th compared to his teammate with less experience, down in 17th. The Alpines having a very difficult time. They've got a wonderful motorhome, but not a very quick race car round here. Pierre Gasly in 19th and Franco Colapinto down in 20th, although the gap between them is only just over 1/10 of a second, so not too bad for Franco Colapinto. But I think the driver of this session so far, the surprise package, has been the Aston Martin.
I think the Alpine motorhome is a bit blingy, if you ask me. It's a bit too sort of Abu Dhabi nightclub. Not that I've been in many Abu Dhabi nightclubs. It's all like gold walls and shimmering.
It reminds the lower floor and the stairs remind me of like an Etihad business class.
That's where I'm thinking of, yeah, exactly.
But then the top floor
business
is like
class I
Alpine
walk through on my way to economy.
Yeah.
Just to make that super crystal clear. I like it. I'd say it's one of the better ones in the paddock. I think if you've got a rooftop terrace, you're winning in my game. Aston Martin's got a pretty nice one, actually. But anyway.
Hasn't everybody got a rooftop terrace these days?
No. Have a look next time you wander up and down the paddock. At least not one that's open to the
McLaren
public.
don't.
McLaren don't.
Mercedes do.
Williams
Ferrari
do,
don't.
but
Williams
it's not that
do.
nice.
Alpine do. Aston Martin do.
Sauber don't.
Sauber and Aston Martin and Haas don't.
But we were talking about this, actually, producer Paddy mentioned it. McLaren used to have a really cool motorhome, didn't they? Where they had a sort of almost atrium, sort of double veranda, like a double story veranda that you could go up on, and almost like a chandelier hanging down. They've sort of gone away from that these days, but they're houses essentially now. Yeah. That's how big they are. It's how big they've become, and they can be taken down and put up in the blink of an eye. It's incredible, really, what they can do. 17 minutes and 20 seconds remain. It's Lando Norris fastest ahead of Oscar Piastri. Charles Leclerc is third. Then it's the two Aston Martins. Stroll ahead of Alonso. That's the top five. By the way, belated happy birthday, Fernando Alonso. We missed it earlier this week. 44 years old. 44. Makes his 60th start for Aston Martin this weekend. Did you get him a birthday card, Andrew?
I didn't.
Have you said happy birthday to him?
I haven't seen him this weekend, actually. Not least because he's been having his back treated, hasn't he?
Yes, that's true.
Actually, that's not true. I have seen him. I spoke to him yesterday in the press conference.
Oh, okay. But you didn't ask him how. You didn't say happy birthday. How did you celebrate?
I would be unprofessional, Harry.
Would it?
Yeah. If I saw him like face to face in private, I would probably say.
But not in the public press conference.
No. The last sort of relatively in-depth conversation I had with him was in Montreal, where we were discussing his Zapata moustache.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
He's gone away from that though now, isn't he?
I think it's still there.
Is it still there?
Yeah,
I haven't actually seen him this weekend.
He wants to look intimidating, he said. I think most people find him pretty intimidating. I don't know.
You just have to look into his eyes and you're intimidated. Fernando Alonso. But yeah, missed FP1 for a bit of treatment on his back with a muscle issue, but back in the car. So Felipe Drogovic was the one who took part in that one. Alonso's fifth ahead of Hamilton. There's Russell, Hadjar, Tsunoda and Antonelli, the top 10. Behrman, Hülkenberg, Ocon, Verstappen and Lawson, the top 15. Sainz, Bortoletto, Albon and the two Alpines, 19th and 20th. I'll tell you what, Sam, what do you do if you're Franco Colapinto at this stage of the season, and it's not happening for you right now. Okay, he's actually not too far away from his teammate at the moment, about 10th of a second.
Harry, what can you do? You've just got to keep on trying.
Yeah, how do you keep up that motivation?
It's challenging. Yeah. It's challenging. If you're coming in P20 and you're slower than your teammate every time you go out, it's hard. But he'll have sports psychologists working with him. He'll be in the simulator as often as he can be. Clearly, they'll have some very good engineering support there.
Nice hospitality.
Yeah, good hospitality. Lovely glasses for your sparkling water. No, he's got all the tools there in order to improve. But it's very difficult when you haven't got the car underneath you to score regular points. It's got to be frustrating in that scenario.
Yeah, hasn't scored points since last year when he made those outings with Williams, Franco Colapinto. Let's hear it from Carlos Sainz.
Box. We have lost telemetry. Box. Car is currently unsafe. Just stop in box, engine off, and stay in the car before further instruction. Radio check, can you hear me?
Sounds like issues then on board the Williams of Carlos Sainz. Lost telemetry, the car is not safe. And he didn't respond to that radio message, did he? But he's making his way round the circuit now. Let's see if he comes in at the end of this lap. I'll tell you what, let's head down to pit lane, Jenny.
Yeah, I'm just by the Williams garage actually, fortuitously, and they've just dashed across to the other side. They're trying to release the pit board. They don't have it out during sessions, only really when it comes to the meaty end of the weekend. So they're having to unwrap it. So obviously the comms isn't working to him. He must have lost everything, which is a bit scary. So they're trying to unwrap his board and put it out so he can at least try and see it. I know, that's what I'm saying. He has no comms. So they're trying to put out the pit board so that they can get him in. It's the only way they can communicate with him.
Yeah, but he's just gone by. He's down into turn one now, so it's going to be at least another lap or so before he gets out, before he gets the message from the pit board from Williams. So Carlos Sainz out there with no radio communication right now, no telemetry going back to the Williams garage, and a car that they're saying is unsafe.
Well, they're saying it's unsafe because it's unsafe in the way that for reliability reasons it's unsafe. These cars have so much telemetry going on, and the teams have so much going on that they want that information at all times live. This is like going back to Formula Renault UK back in 2005, just get in it, no radio and drive, and then we'll see you at the end of the session.
I think they probably mean electrically unsafe, don't they? So, when he comes in, it's live. Yeah, that's what I think.
Oh, here we go.
I cannot hear you. Can you hear me? Box. We've lost telemetry and all comms. Stay out. We got telemetry back. Stay out, please.
I think it's purely because they've lost telemetry. They don't know the state of the car. So if something did go wrong, they wouldn't know about it, and then that could be a big issue for the remainder of the weekend.
Because you sometimes do see if a car retires in a race, for instance, and it's electrically unsafe, they have to sort of jump out very delicately without touching any of the car, and then the marshal will come over wearing those big yellow marigolds to handle it.
We have that in Formula E.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, that's a whole other level.
Turn myself into a piece of bacon.
Yeah, you've got to be very delicate when you jump out of that one. But Carlos Sainz then been told to stay out, so they got telemetry back. So happy days for now for the Williams driver, who's currently on a race run. He's down in 16th spot at the moment.
Well, talking of race runs,
yes.
How are you looking? Not yet. No,
you've gone way too soon, Bert.
Hang on, there's only 10 minutes left of the session. 11 minutes 40.
It's at least an 8 minutes and down for
sorry, I'm 3 minutes early. What a shame.
Yeah. So come on. Oh, you're a bit rusty around the edges.
I'm not rusty around the edges. You're rusty around the edges.
Right. 11 minutes and 24, 23, 22 seconds remain. So we are getting some race pace from the drivers up and down the field. I want to come back to the Red Bull situation in terms of Yuki Tsunoda. If he does end up leaving at the end of the year, and that could well happen. But also the other factor is that Red Bull have quite a handy young driver in Formula 2 right now called Arvid Lindblad. who a lot of people expect will graduate next year to Formula One. We expect to see him in some FP1 outings as well this season, as he's been granted a super license actually early doors. They had to have special dispensation for that. So we expect him to be in one of the Racing Bulls cars. So is the natural thing, Tsunoda goes, Hadjar moves up, and Lindblad comes in? Where's the Liam Lawson in this? It's a really tricky one, I think, to navigate for Red Bull.
It's challenging. If you are Racing Bulls, who's going to score you more points? A resurgent Tsunoda or Liam Lawson? That's really difficult to answer. But then Tsunoda isn't really a Red Bull driver. He's a Honda driver. Where are Honda going to be next year? Aston Martin, but Stroll's not going to give up a seat. It's challenging for him to find a seat again in Formula One. Will be very, very tricky if he doesn't stay on at Red Bull.
He's going to get dropped by Red Bull for sure, and he's going to end up Aston Martin as reserve driver, is what I'm told.
Okay.
Is that an exclusive? Is that breaking news?
I'm not 100% in it, and I'm not excited enough to be bothered to find out for sure. But I'm pretty sure that he's going to be Aston Martin's reserve driver.
It would make sense, wouldn't it? Unless he's suddenly massively resurgent.
Oh my God, man! Look at this.
He lost radio and telemetry.
So that's Liam Lawson a little earlier on the radio, who was rather stuck behind Carlos Sainz, and I think was in disbelief at how the Spaniard was almost impeding him, and then the team coming on the radio to let him know that he was without any sight apart from those of his mirrors. But those mirrors aren't really that. The mirrors aren't really. I feel like they're just for show sometimes, really, on the Formula One car.
It's difficult to see out of. They are difficult, even with what I've been driving the last decade. The mirrors, they flex and they move with acceleration and top speed. Sometimes the mirror glass itself decides to fall out or crack, and then that's a real problem. It's not like in your normal road car that you can go down the motorway as well and think, I'll just sneak it up a little bit, or I'll have a little bit more inside. These are adjustments that would need to be made by a mechanic. You physically can't get your hands to them. And they're so small. I mean, you're in a driver's eye right now with one of the McLarens, and you can't really see the mirrors at the moment, but you can get the idea that it would be very tricky to look out of. Now in the dirty air with Lando Norris, who crosses the line and doesn't stay in the dirty air of the Williams.
Hey, I don't know what's going on. It's just undiagnosed. I can't get any balance.
It's Max Verstappen, undrivable, can't get any balance. He's down in 14th. He's actually behind Tsunoda, who's up in 9th. Red Bull, probably not very happy so far in FP2, but we have heard this on Fridays from Max Verstappen, and Red Bull, if they're good at one thing, they are great at an overnight tournament.
Bounce back ability, and then they go and plonk it on the front row tomorrow. Knowing Max, I wouldn't put it past him to put it on the front 2 rows tomorrow and do something extremely special, because that's what he does. But with 7.5 minutes to go here in FP2, it is certainly looking like another McLaren circuit here. Norris leads Piastri by just under 0.3 of a second. Charles Leclerc's been looking strong all weekend so far. He sits in 3rd, and then the surprise package of the weekend, Lance Stroll in P4 heading Fernando Alonso, who sat out FP1. He's in 5th ahead of Lewis Hamilton, 7/10 down on Lando Norris.
Max Verstappen has just been told on the radio the tyres are cold, just didn't catch the last word of that, but I think
try to keep pushing.
Yeah, that would make sense. So trying to get those tyres up to temperature. Air temperature is about 27 degrees, track temperature 36 degrees.
And the commentary box about 4 degrees.
Just how we like it.
No, honestly,
It's balmy in here. What are you talking about?
I think this is perfect.
All of you need help. Like serious medical help.
The aircon is actually off.
There's something wrong.
It's actually off.
Yeah, before in FP1, it was
backtracking now.
Genuinely terrible.
I think you're just of a cold disposition today. Don't know what it is. Something's not set you right with the aircon.
You're like my daughter. She's got like a 1 degree temperature threshold in her body.
Yeah, but my BMI is slightly different to you two. So,
what are you saying?
We'll get you a nice little blanket for FP3 tomorrow.
Can we now go to you, Benny. And would you like me to do an intro for you?
Stop trying to jump the gun, Bird.
It's five. You said 7 minutes. Now I've got under 6.
I've got 2 laps of Oscar Piastri.
Is that it?
That's not
okay,
really
fine.
enough.
We'll give you 3 minutes to go, and then you'll have a little bit to talk about.
The problem is traffic.
Yeah, that's true.
We keep getting people doing 1 minute 25s, which are 3 seconds off the pace.
2 seconds quicker than my pole lap in GP2 round here. 27.
Wow, good knowledge.
I looked it up earlier just in case, just to see. I wanted to see the difference between the F2 now versus when I did GP2. So I did a 1:27.7 for pole position. I think it was half a tenth quicker than Pastor Maldonado or someone like that.
Oh, Pastor Maldonado.
Yep, and Sergio Perez. The great Jules Bianchi was my teammate that year. Yeah, it was a good year.
Yeah, I'm losing the throat now. Amazing.
On you are in traffic, Isaac. Head down, please. We need to focus on this for the race.
Sir Hadjar reporting back on his race run at the moment. He's done 11 laps on the medium tyre, has Hadjar. So working his way through the feedback as he just starts the 12th one.
And it's a good point that the engineer makes there, because with his kind of race, he is going to be in traffic the entire race. Someone like Norris or Piastri, they're probably going to set their car up for more clean air, whereas someone like a Hadjar will set their car up to be in traffic. And I think now's the time that we speak to the main man when it comes to tyres and tyre life and pace in these kind of situations. Let's listen to Andrew Benson and what he's got to say about tyres.
Long Run Corner with Andrew Benson.
That was one of the worst sells I've ever heard. You're still struggling from your body fat allegation. Here's some radio.
Is this guy doing this on purpose or what? Like, what's wrong with him?
Yeah, Isaac Hadjar's upset with someone in front of him. Let's ignore that for now. Okay, so I think we've got slightly compromised race data because there's a lot of traffic, as we're hearing from Isaac Hadjar's radio there. But on the race runs, actually, the McLarens look quite closely matched, but just like on the single lap runs, Norris is a tenth and a half or so, maybe 2 tenths on average quicker than Piastri. I would caveat that by saying I've only got 2 or 3 laps worth of data. What I can say as well is that it's hard to compare the others because Hamilton's on soft tyres. The Ferrari, unsurprisingly, looks at least half a second on average slower than the McLarens. But that Aston Martin pace looks pretty decent on the long run as well. Alonso's first lap for his race simulation was at 1 minute 21.4. And I can't see many cars able to get down to that sort of lap time apart from the McLarens. So maybe this is looking like quite an encouraging weekend for Aston Martin.
Thank you very much for that, Andrew. It is certainly looking on an upward trajectory then for Aston Martin. Right, thank you for that. And Long Run Corner, let's head down to pit lane, Jenny.
Yeah, just to give you a bit of a weather update, the rain seems to have cleared away for tomorrow. We've got some dark clouds that have been hovering over the track today, but actually haven't brought any of the damp stuff. Maybe Sunday for rain? I think there might be a few people who would like it.
We'll take a bit of rain. I think Hungary needs a bit of rain, but I mean, we've got 2 minutes left. Are we going to get into the wet weather debate with less than 2 minutes left? Sam, what were your thoughts on what happened in Belgium?
I'm still sulking on the fact that apparently my Long Run Corner intro was terrible.
Well, it was, but
you can do it from now on.
You've had better. I
have had better. No, when I've looked at the radar, and it's not like I've looked at the major, Meteo France's of the world or whatever, but I've certainly looked on the phone, and it did look like if there's a chance of a thunderstorm, it would happen on race day. So let's keep an eye out for that, and that can change everything for race day.
But do you think, and using the most recent wet weather race, which was last weekend in Belgium, do you think if we get something like that, we need to go racing sooner? Could we, in terms of actually we waited too long in Belgium, we should be using the wet weather tyre What are your thoughts?
Sorry, that's the rag, I think, that I was talking about from Max Verstappen's car on the exit of turn 3. Let's have another look. We're looking at a replay of it now. I definitely think that's a rag, don't you?
I agree. I think it's some sort of cleaning rag or something. Yes.
Going to the wet weather debate, these cars, it is challenging for the drivers. You know, it is basically like driving at 250 kilometers an hour and only being able to see 3 meters in front of your face. It's very, very challenging because of the way that the tyre just launches water straight up into the air, and huge volumes of it, like 70 litres of water a second is thrown up into the sky.
Yeah, I think, Sam, when I was speaking to Gasly yesterday and a few of the other drivers, they're very concerned that, as you say, it's not the rain coming down necessarily, it's certainly in Spa, it's the amount of water and the spray that it picks up, and they are willing or keen to work with the FIA to develop some sort of wheel arch that keeps that spray limited so that they can see better. George Russell said it really well. He said, imagine it's raining really heavily and you go 100 kilometers an hour down a motorway, turn off your windscreen wipers. He didn't say do this, he just said imagine if you did, and that's what you'll see when you're in an F1 car. You have no windscreen wipers, the visibility is terrible, and he doesn't want any more deaths to happen, especially around Spa, where we have lost people in the recent not too distant past.
Yeah.
That came out wrong. You know what I'm trying to say. So I think they're all cautious, and rightly so, I think.
Yeah, ultimately it comes down to safety, doesn't it? And if that delays us slightly, then so be it. As just getting a couple of replays of the two McLaren drivers almost taking each other out, coming into turn 1. Coming in all locked up on the inside is Norris. Piastri feeding around the outside, and so close was Norris's front wing to the rear right tyre of Oscar Piastri. McLaren would have winced at that one.
Oh, that wasn't fun. I think Lando Norris obviously coming out the pits to do a start on the soft compound tyre as opposed to Piastri on the medium. That could be quite interesting data for the team. But yeah, that was very, very close.
That's a checkered flag as well. Norris fastest at the end of FP2. And then Oscar Piastri just behind, 0.2 of a second, Charles Leclerc. Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso concluding a good day for the Aston Martin squad. Lewis Hamilton 6th, George Russell is 7th, Isaac Hadjar, Yuki Tsunoda and Kimi Antonelli the top 10. Behrman, Hulkenberg, Ocon, Verstappen with struggles down in 14th ahead of Liam Lawson. Carlos Sainz 16th ahead of Gabriel Bortoleto. Alex Albon 18th, and the two Alpines making up the rear of the field. Pierre Gasly ahead of Franco Colapinto. That just about does us for FP2. Sam, any final thoughts, words of wisdom you want to leave us with ahead of Wally tomorrow?
No, not really.
No?
Nope.
Okay,
I'm good.
All right then. No, you're still sulking, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I was just having a think actually about Yuki Tsunoda. I actually think he's had a decent day.
Yeah.
Even though he's been complaining, not just the fact that he's beaten Max Verstappen on pace today, because Max has been all out of shape with the balance of that car, but 2 more tenths, he's looking at knocking on the door of the top 5, and he hasn't been there all season.
Yeah, it was top 7 last time out, but that was a long time coming for Tsunoda. Let's see if he can carry a good start to the weekend onwards into Saturday. We will be here for FP3 on Sports Extra 2 at 11:25, and the all-important qualifying for the Hungarian Grand Prix. The green light will come on at 3 o'clock, and we'll be on air just before that on Sports Extra 2. But that just about does us from Hungary. Thanks to the team. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live, and we can hand you back over to Kevin Howes.
Have a great weekend there, Harry and the team. I'll be listening in, of course, over the weekend. Plenty going on there. And I see Steve Crossman's presenting as well there, so Steve will be part of the team as well over on 5 Live. OK, Sports Extra right now. It's England versus India.